Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is the one that scares you the most. For Elinora Vale, that meant stepping between her best friend and the most dangerous man in the city, her small hand striking his face in a slap that would echo through both their lives forever. Elinora Vale, who everyone called Nora, believed the world could be a kind place. She saw proof of it every day in her work at the little flower shop, the stems and petals. Here, in this quiet space filled with the smell of earth and flowers, things made sense. Each plant had its own needs. Some needed bright sun, others liked the shade. Some needed lots of water and others only a little. But they all grew strong if you gave them the right care and a good foundation. Nora thought people were like that too. True strength was not about being the biggest or the loudest. It was about having strong roots, a deep knowledge of what was right and what was wrong. Her best friend Mila was like a sunflower. She was bright and cheerful, always turning her face towards happiness. But lately Mila was drooping. She was worried and nervous and she would not tell Nora why. Nora had noticed the changes. The missed phone calls, the secret texts that made Mila's smile disappear. She knew Mila had been dating a man named Leo, and that Leo was trouble. He was the kind of person who liked shiny things and easy money, and he had introduced Mila to a crowd that made Nora's stomach feel tight with worry. That evening, the sky was painted with soft orange and pink colors as Nora closed the shop. She was meeting Mila at their favorite cafe, and she hoped her friend would finally tell her what was wrong. She arrived to find a scene that made her heart stop. Mila was standing on the sidewalk, her face pale as milk. In front of her was a man Nora had only ever seen in blurry news photos. Luciano Moretti. He was the heir to the Moretti family, the powerful and feared group that controlled the city's shadows. He was tall and dressed in a dark, expensive-looking suit. His face was handsome but cold like a statue. Two other large men stood behind him, blocking the way. People sitting at the cafe tables had gone completely still. They pretended to look at their phones or their coffee cups, but everyone was watching. No one moved to help. "You took something that was not yours," Luciano said to Mila. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the evening air like a knife. "My family does not like thieves." "I didn't," Mila whispered, her voice trembling. "It was Leo. Leo did it, I swear. He set me up to hide his own mistake. Please, you have to believe me." Luciano took a slow step closer. "Leo is not here. You are. And I need answers." Nora saw the tears in Mila's eyes. She saw the raw fear on her friend's face. She saw the crowd of people doing nothing. A hot wave of anger washed over her, burning away her own fear. Her feet were moving before her brain could tell them to stop. She walked right up and stepped between Mila and Luciano, putting her own small body in front of her friend. She had to look up to meet his dark, surprised eyes. "Leave her alone," Nora said. Her voice was soft but it did not shake. "She told you the truth. She didn't do anything wrong." Luciano looked down at her, his expression one of mild amusement, as if a kitten had just tried to roar. He opened his mouth to speak, to dismiss her. That was when Nora did it. Her hand, all on its own, swung through the air. Her palm connected with his cheek with a sharp sound that was terribly loud in the quiet street. Time seemed to freeze. Someone across the street gasped. A woman dropped her phone. Nora heard the tiny clicks of several people recording the scene. Her own breath caught in her throat. She could feel the sting in her palm. She looked at the red mark her hand had left on Luciano's face. She had just hit the most dangerous man in the city. She waited for the world to end. She expected his men to grab her. She expected his own hand to strike her back. Her whole body was trembling, but she did not look away from him. Luciano slowly raised his hand and touched his cheek where she had hit him. He looked truly startled, as if no one had ever done such a thing to him in his entire life. His dark eyes searched her face, looking for the trick, the lie, the fear. He did not find it. All he found was her quiet, shaking bravery. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. A slow smile spread across his face. It was not a nice smile. It was a smirk, a look of deep and sudden interest. He leaned forward just a little so only she could hear his next words. "Finally," he said, his voice a low murmur. "Someone true." He straightened up, gave her one last long look and then turned. Without another word to her or to Mila, he walked away. His two men followed him, and the dark car they arrived in pulled away from the curb and disappeared. The spell was broken. The people on the street started talking all at once, their voices buzzing with excitement and shock. Nora finally let out the breath she was holding. Her legs felt like water. She turned and wrapped her arms around Mila, who was sobbing with relief. "It's okay," Nora whispered, patting her friend's back. He's gone. It's over. But as she stood there on the sidewalk, holding her crying friend, Nora knew it was not over. The look in Luciano Moretti's eyes had not been about anger or revenge. It had been about discovery. And she had a terrible feeling that by slapping him, she had not ended her problems. She had just started a whole new one. The world did not feel safe anymore. The quiet of Nora's small apartment was broken by the buzz of her phone. It did not stop. First, it was a text from a number she did not know. "Did you really slap Luciano Moretti? You're a legend." Nora's stomach twisted. She ignored it, focusing on making tea for a still-shaken Mila. But then another message came. And another. Her social media notifications were piling up like a storm cloud. Mila, curled up on Nora's sofa, finally told the whole story. Her voice was a shaky whisper. "Leo," she began, "he works for the Moretti family. Not a big job. Just small things. But he got greedy. He took a lot of money from a business deal. When Luciano's men started asking questions, Leo panicked. He told them I did it. He said I pressured him into it and that I had the money." Mila wiped her eyes. "I was so stupid, Nora. I believed he loved me. And he used me as a shield." Nora listened, her heart aching for her friend. This was the reason for the fear, the secret text, the sadness. Mila had been carrying this terrible secret, trapped by a lie spun by a coward. While Mila talked, Nora's phone buzzed again. This time it was her boss, Mr. Henderson. His voice was tight with worry. "Nora, I saw the video. Everyone has seen the video." "What video?" Nora asked, though a cold dread was already filling her. "It's everywhere," he said. "On the news sites, on social media. They're calling you the flower girl who slapped the Moretti heir." "Nora, this is very bad. The Morettis, they are not people you want attention from. For the shop's safety and for your own, I think you need to take some time off. A leave of absence. With pay," he added quickly, but the message was clear. Her peaceful life at the flower shop was over. She hung up and finally looked at her phone. The screen was filled with headlines. "Civic courage or crazy? Woman slaps crime prince." There it was, the video from a dozen different angles. She saw herself looking so small, step forward. She saw her own hand swing. She saw the shock on Luciano's face and then that slow, chilling smirk. People online were calling her brave. They were calling her a hero for standing up to a bully. But mixed in with the praise were other comments, dark and frightening. Anonymous users with no profile pictures wrote things like, "She's a dead woman walking," and "Moretti will make an example of her." Nora put her phone down, her hands trembling. She had wanted to do the right thing. She had only wanted to protect her friend. But her one act had become a spark, and now it was a fire she could not control. She was no longer just Nora from the flower shop. She was a symbol. And symbols, she feared, were easy targets. Later that night, after Mila had fallen into a fitful sleep, Nora went to her window. She looked down at the quiet street. A sleek, black car was parked across the road. It had not been there before. Its engine was off, and its windows were tinted so dark she could not see inside. But she knew. She knew with a certainty that made her blood run cold. She was being watched. The world outside her window was no longer just her city. It was a chessboard, and she had just become a piece in a game she did not know how to play. The world inside Luciano Moretti's office was as cold and hard as the world outside Nora's window was soft and living. His office was on the top floor of a tall building, filled with expensive furniture and paintings of grim-faced men from his family's past. It was a gilded cage, a beautiful prison. Luciano sat at his large dark wood desk, staring at a single piece of paper. It was a report on Elinora Vale. He knew her name now. He knew where she lived, where she worked, that her parents lived far away, and that she had no criminal record. Her life was simple, clean, and honest. It was a life completely opposite to his own. One of his men, a large, stern man named Marco, stood before the desk. Marco had been with the family for a long time. He was loyal, but his loyalty was to the old ways. "The video is a problem, Luciano," Marco said, his voice a low rumble. "The Volkov family is laughing. They say you have gone soft. They say you let a little girl hit you and did nothing. Our own men are asking questions. Your father, he is not pleased." Luciano did not look up from the report. "Let them talk," he said, his voice quiet. "But boss," Marco insisted, stepping closer. "This shows weakness. In our world, weakness is an invitation. It encourages challenges. We need to respond. We need to show strength. We should handle this problem." Finally, Luciano looked up. His eyes were dark and flat. "She is not a problem to be handled. Is that clear?" Marco's jaw tightened. He did not understand. He saw a slap as an insult that demanded a violent answer. Luciano saw it as something else entirely. For years he had been surrounded by people who lied, who schemed, who were loyal only out of fear. They flattered him to his face and plotted behind his back. His own cousin had tried to frame an innocent girl to save his own skin. The world was full of cowards and liars. But Nora, she had been true. She had been scared, he saw it in her eyes, but she had still stepped forward. She did not do it for money or for power. She did it for a friend. That kind of raw, honest courage was a thing he had never seen before. It was like a single, bright light in a very dark room. He was not angry. He was fascinated. Later that day, Nora went to the grocery store. She was trying to act normal, to do a normal thing, but every person made her jump. She felt exposed under the bright store lights. As she reached for a can of soup, a man stepped beside her. He was rough-looking with a mean smile. Well, he said quietly. The famous flower girl. You've got a lot of people talking, you know. My bosses think it's real funny what you did. Nora's heart hammered in her chest. She froze, her hand still on the soup can. They think it means the Morettis are getting weak, the man continued, leaning closer. Maybe it's time for a new family to be in charge. And maybe we start by showing what happens to people who embarrass them. Before Nora could even breathe, two other men appeared. They were not rough-looking. They wore neat jackets and had calm, serious faces. They did not say a word. They simply stood on either side of the first man, took him firmly by the arms and walked him away. He did not struggle. He just looked suddenly very afraid. The whole thing happened in complete silence and was over in seconds. Nora stood alone in the aisle, her knees shaking. She had not been saved by a kind stranger. She had been protected. This was Luciano's work. He was not just watching her. He was guarding her. And the message was terrifyingly clear. The danger was real, and it was her connection to him that had put her right in the middle of it. The fear from the grocery store clung to Nora like a cold shadow. She could not stay in her apartment, feeling the walls close in. Her feet carried her to the one place that had always been her sanctuary. A small, quiet park with a winding path and an old wooden bench under a willow tree. Here she could breathe. She sat on the bench, watching the leaves dance in the breeze, trying to find some of the peace this place had always offered. But it felt different now. The world felt sharper, more dangerous. She did not hear him approach. One moment she was alone, and the next he was sitting on the other end of the bench. Luciano Moretti. He was not wearing a suit today, just dark trousers and a simple jacket, but he still looked out of place. He looked too polished, too still for this soft, green world. Nora's heart leaped into her throat. She gripped the edge of the bench, her knuckles turning white. You should be more careful, he said. His voice was calm, not a threat, just a statement. The man in the store was from the Volkov family. They see an opportunity in you. An opportunity for what? Nora asked, her own voice tight. To challenge me, he replied, looking straight ahead at the trees. They believe my reaction to you shows weakness. They think by hurting you, they can prove I am not strong enough to lead my family. So I'm a pawn in your game, she said, anger cutting through her fear. That's why you're here? To tell me I'm a target in your war? He turned his head to look at her. His dark eyes were intense, but not cruel. I am here to offer my protection. Properly this time. No, Nora said firmly. She shook her head. I don't want your protection. I don't want anything from you or your world. You called me true. Your world is built on lies and fear. Don't try to drag me into it. Don't taint mine. Luciano was silent for a long moment. Her words seemed to hit him with a physical weight. No one talked to him like this. No one refused him. They obeyed out of fear or greed. They never refused out of principle. He reached into his pocket and placed a simple, small phone on the bench between them. This is a burner phone, he said. It has only one number in it. What? When not if you need it, call. He stood up to leave, then paused. That man in the store, he said quietly. He was not lying. The danger is real. And it is my fault you are in it. That is why I cannot just walk away. He left as quietly as he had arrived, leaving Nora alone with the phone on the bench. It sat there, a small black promise of more trouble to come. She stared at it, knowing that to pick it up would be to accept a link to him. But to leave it felt like ignoring a storm cloud on the horizon. The phone sat on Nora's kitchen counter for 2 days. She ignored it, hoping the problem would just go away. But it did not. Mila called, her voice hysterical. He found me, Nora. Leo found me. He came to my work. He said it's all my fault that Luciano is angry with him. He said if I don't get you to talk to Luciano to make him back off, he's going to tell people where my mom lives. Nora felt a cold fury. Leo, the real coward, was now threatening an innocent woman to save his own skin. This was the world Luciano lived in. This was the ugliness he was a part of. Her refusal to get involved had not protected Mila. It had made her a bigger target. She looked at the burner phone. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. It felt heavy and wrong. She found the single number and pressed call. He answered on the first ring. Nora. He said her name like he had been expecting her call. It's Leo, she said, her voice shaking with anger. He's threatening Mila's mother. You have to make him stop. There was a brief silence on the other end. I will handle it, he said, and the line went dead. The solution was swift and terrifying. The next day Mila called again, her voice a mix of relief and new fear. Leo is gone, she whispered. He just vanished. His apartment is empty. His boss said he was transferred out of the city suddenly. For training. Nora knew it was not a transfer. It was a removal. Luciano had handled it with the brutal efficiency of his world. He had solved the problem, but he had done it his way. The violence was not visible, but it was there, lurking beneath the surface. She had asked for his help, and he had pulled her deeper into the shadows. She felt a sickening guilt. She had traded one person's safety for another's freedom, and it felt like a stain on her soul. A few evenings later, Nora was alone at the flower shop, tidying up after closing. The bell on the door jingled. She turned and her breath caught. It was Luciano. I am just checking on you, he said, his hands in his pockets. He looked around the shop, his eyes taking in the buckets of flowers, the bags of soil, the simple beauty of the place. He seemed less like a predator here, more like a visitor from a different planet. Leo is gone, Nora said, her voice flat. He will not bother your friend again, Luciano confirmed. What did you do to him? She asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know. I gave him a choice, Luciano said, running a finger gently over the petal of a lily. A job far away where he could not cause any more problems. It was a more generous choice than he deserved. They stood in silence for a moment. The air was thick with unsaid things. This is a good place, he said finally, changing the subject. It is peaceful. He nodded toward a small radio playing soft classical music in the corner. You like this music? It helps the flowers grow, Nora said, a little of her defensiveness fading. It was a strange, quiet moment. My mother, he said almost to himself, she loved this kind of music. She wanted me to be an architect. To build beautiful things. He gave a short, humorless laugh. I build nothing. I only break things. In that moment, Nora did not see the Mafia air. She saw a man trapped by a life he never chose, a man who remembered a mother's dream for him. It was just a glimpse, a crack in his hard exterior. But the real world was always waiting. The shop door opened again and Marco walked in. His eyes swept over Nora with clear dislike before settling on Luciano. Boss, Marco said, his tone tight. We need to go. There is a meeting. Your father is waiting. He stressed the words your father, a clear reminder of where Luciano's real duties lay. Luciano's face hardened again, the brief softness vanishing. He gave Nora a slight nod and then he was gone, pulled back into his gilded cage. The peaceful feeling in the shop vanished with him, replaced by the uneasy sense that their two worlds were spinning closer and closer together, and a crash was coming. The uneasy peace shattered on a cold, rainy Thursday. Nora was walking through the concrete parking garage beneath her apartment building. The air was damp and smelled of oil and old tires. Her footsteps echoed in the empty space, a lonely sound that made her hurry. She never saw their faces clearly. Two men stepped out from behind a thick pillar. They moved fast with a purpose that was not friendly. One of them grabbed her arm, his grip like iron. The flower girl, he grunted. Time to send a message to your boyfriend. Nora's fear was a cold splash of water. But beneath the fear, a fierce anger sparked. She would not go quietly. As the second man reached for her, she swung her heavy tote bag, hitting him hard in the side of the head. He cursed, stumbling back. She kicked out, her shoe connecting with the first man's shin. It was not a strong kick, but it was enough to surprise him. She tried to scream, but a hand clamped over her mouth. She fought like a wild thing, scratching and twisting. She was small, but she was not weak. Her strength was not in her muscles, but in her will to survive. Suddenly, new footsteps pounded on the concrete. Luciano was there. He was not calm or polished now. His face was a mask of pure, cold rage. He moved with a speed and violence that was terrifying to see. He did not shout or yell. The fight was silent, brutal, and over in less than a minute. The two men were on the ground, moaning. Luciano stood over them, his chest heaving. He looked at Nora, his eyes wild with an emotion she could not name. "Did they hurt you?" he asked, his voice rough. Nora could only shake her head, her whole body trembling. She was safe. He had saved her. But the way he had fought, the raw fury she had seen in him, scared her almost as much as the attackers had. This was the true face of his world. This was the violence that lay just beneath the surface. He had pulled her out of the fire, but she could still feel the heat of the flames. After the attack, the world felt thin and fragile. Nora could not sleep. Every sound in her apartment made her jump. When she closed her eyes, she saw the violent struggle in the garage. She saw the look on Luciano's face. He came to her the next day. She would not let him in. She stood in her doorway, blocking the entrance. "You need to leave," she said, her voice hollow. "This has to stop. Look at what is happening because of you. I was almost kidnapped. I don't know what. I see that fight every time I close my eyes. This is your world. It is bloody and cruel. I want no part of it." Luciano looked tired. The anger was gone from his face, replaced by a deep weariness. "Nora," he began. "No," she interrupted, her voice breaking. "Just go. Please." He left, and the silence in her apartment felt heavier than ever. Across the city in his father's grand office, a different storm was brewing. Luciano's father, a man with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice, did not raise his voice. His quiet words were more dangerous than any shout. "The Volkovs attacked a civilian because of your distraction," his father said. "They see you as weak." The men are whispering. "You have a simple choice, Luciano. You end this foolishness. You prove your loyalty to this family. You go to war with the Volkovs. You crush them completely. Or," his father paused, letting the word hang in the air, "you will be replaced. There is no room for sentiment in our life." Luciano stood before his father's desk, feeling the walls of his gilded cage finally close in. One path was clear: more violence, more bloodshed, the life he was born into. The other path was a mystery, a terrifying jump into the unknown. He thought of Nora's courage, her honesty. He thought of her telling him his world was built on lies. For the first time, he saw the emptiness of the path his father laid out before him. It was a road that led only to more darkness. Alone in her quiet apartment, Nora's anger slowly turned into a painful understanding. She had been so focused on her own fear, on blaming Luciano for the darkness he brought. But he was trapped in that darkness. He had been born into it. She had slapped him for standing up for her friend, but was she now abandoning him when he needed someone to stand up for him? Her true strength was not just in defending the innocent. It was in believing that people could change. Luciano was trying. He had walked away from a fight in the park. He had protected her not with threats but by simply being there. He had shared a piece of his lost dream with her. He was not a monster. He was a man who had never been shown a different way. She could not let him face his father alone. She would not fight with violence but with words. She would stand for him as she had stood for Mila. Getting the address of the Moretti estate was not difficult. It was a famous, feared place on a hill overlooking the city. When she arrived, the tall iron gates looked like the entrance to a fortress. A grim-faced guard tried to stop her, but Nora looked him straight in the eye. "Tell Mr. Moretti that Elinora Vale is here to speak with him about his son's loyalty." She was led into a grand room that was more like a throne room than a living room. Luciano's father sat in a large chair. Luciano stood to the side, his face a mask of shock and worry when he saw her. "Nora, what are you doing here?" he said, stepping forward. She ignored him and faced his father. She was small in the huge room, but she stood straight, her roots deep. "Your son," she said, her voice clear and steady, "is the strongest man I have ever met." The old man's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You think strength is making people fear you. But that is not strength. That is just bullying. Your son is strong because he is the only one in this family who is questioning this life. He is the only one who wants something better. That takes more courage than following old, cruel rules. You want loyalty from him? Then you should try showing him some respect." The room was utterly silent. Luciano was staring at her, his eyes wide. He saw her there, small and brave, speaking truth to the most powerful and feared man he knew. She was not afraid. In that moment she was the strongest person in the room. Inspired by her courage, Luciano turned to his father. His voice was calm and final. "She is right," he said. "I will not start a war to prove a point. I will not live this life anymore." He looked at his father, not with anger but with a sad determination. "I am walking away." He did not wait for an answer. He walked across the room past the stunned guards and stood beside Nora. Together, they turned and walked out of the mansion, leaving the world of shadows behind and stepping into the uncertain light of the future. The world did not end when Luciano Moretti walked away from his family. Instead, it quietly rearranged itself. There were rumors, of course. Whispers of his betrayal, of the shame he had brought. His father, true to his word, cut him off completely. Luciano became a ghost to the world he once ruled, a man with a price on his head and a past that would always chase him. But for the first time he was free. Nora's life too found a new shape. With the shadow of the Moretti name no longer looming over her, the threats faded. The viral video became old news, replaced by the next sensation. The quiet returned, but it was a different kind of quiet, one they had earned. Several months later, the bell above the door of the Stems and Petals chimed. The shop looked the same, yet everything was different. Mila, her smile now genuine and her spirit unburdened, was arranging a bouquet at the counter. She and Nora had become partners, their friendship forged stronger in the fire of their shared ordeal. Nora was in the back, repotting a stubborn fern, her hands covered in soil. She looked up as a familiar figure filled the doorway. Luciano. He looked different. The cold, polished edge was gone, replaced by a quieter, more relaxed warmth. He held a small, plain paper bag. "Hi," he said, a simple, easy word that held a world of meaning. "Hi," Nora replied, a soft smile touching her lips. He placed the bag on the workbench. Inside was a small, unmarked packet of seeds. "I was at the botanical garden," he explained. "A collector was there. He said these are very rare. They need patience and the right conditions. I thought, maybe we could try to grow them. Together." Nora picked up the packet, her dirty fingers holding it gently. She looked at him, at this man who had traded a life of power for a packet of seeds and a chance at something real. The shop was warm, filled with the scent of life and growth. She had slapped the Mafia boss, not to bring him to his knees, but to help him remember how to stand up. And in the end, they had both learned that the strongest courage is the kind that chooses to build, not break. Their story was not about a princess saving a villain, but about two people helping each other find a better path, their lives now intertwined like strong, steady roots, ready for whatever might grow next. If you enjoyed this story of courage and redemption, please like and subscribe for more. Your support helps bring more stories to life.